Yo, welcome to another episode of the BJJ GOONS podcast. I'm one half of the team, Tim, the Mushmaster Spriggs, and with me as always every week is...
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's Nico Ball, no new Nico, and welcome to the BJJ Goons studio. We're here together again. You know, we went from being like snowed out like the last times we were supposed to meet up to like it being like tank top weather. I'm so happy right now, Tim.
I'm ecstatic. I'm so happy that the weather's nice, even though I have absolutely nowhere to go.
Not a damn place.
I've just been in the studio cooking up heat for you guys. I've got a lot of breakdowns that I want to do. My goal is to record one a day and then take a day and just edit it all. The video editing skills have come up a long way. I will say thank you to Nico for putting me on.
Yeah, that's what's up. That's what's up. I'm proud of you. You edited your first clip for the podcast. Yeah, that's what's up.
Yeah, so the video editing is there. I've always had these video editing ideas in my mind, but now that I'm actually putting into practice what I've learned, it's actually getting easier, and you never know. Maybe we'll make the next great jiu-jitsu vid, like how Arte Suave was dope, and maybe we might even have an actual like movie studio. We keep this up, but
yeah,
shout out to you, Nico.
So what are you doing with all these?
With all the breakdowns, I haven't decided. I think what I'm going to do at first is just put it out there on the YouTube, maybe the first couple, and eventually just keep it on the Patreon only. I'm using this for practice as well. I'm practicing because I would love to start being a actual commentator for matches. I think Highwell does a good job. I think a lot of people do a good job, but I think it would be great to have the next generation of guys that came up in the game to kind of say their piece and have a voice. I think this podcast has done a great job for us being able to say our part and our role in the jiu-jitsu community. But I think just as my generation of grapplers get older, we want to be able to have a voice too and be like, hey, this is the new school stuff, or hey, this is a new school or newer school guy. And I want to make an example of what we can do as athletes because, we're more than just instructors or guys that are trying to put out instructional content. Like, we know the game very well and we can speak to what it's like on an elite level. Not to say other guys can't. But
nah, I think you bring up a really good point because I never really thought about that until you brought it up to me for the first time, and then I kind of started paying attention a little bit more, and I realized there's a big difference between commentators that just seem like they're really high and have no idea what they're talking about, and they're not even following either the MMA or the jiu-jitsu match that they're actually commentating on. It's they have no value to add compared to the people that actually can tell you what's going on, and then those other people that can go back and give you a little bit of history. It's kind of like an art, definitely an art.
Definitely. So that's what I plan on doing with it, Nico. Like I mentioned, we have a Patreon. If you would like to subscribe and follow the Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/BJJGoons. We have a lot of uncensored, unruly, just keeping it 100, keeping it one foul wow content on there that we can't really say on the regular pod because we have sponsors and we don't want to get canceled on the regular pod. So if you want to hear how we really feel about stuff, you go to our Patreon.
I mean, I don't know if it's how you really feel. You and Aaron are kind of nasty. Y'all was just talking about spitting. It's wild. We'll come up with some actual clips or something, but
it was a very uncensored, unruly. Wait a minute! Don't just put it on me.
I don't know, and that's the thing. I'm sitting here thinking, it's the only reason that we brought Erin back was A, because she's a vet. B, because we both know her very well. But C, recently somebody asked me who I thought the craziest guest had been on the BJJ Goons, and I brought her up. And I was so she was there because I think she's crazy, and I love her for it. So I don't know why I would expect anything less. And we were we were on Zoom for hours actually, because we were just chopping it up afterwards too. That was really dope. That's gonna be a really hot episode on Patreon. That was sex, drugs, and jiu-jitsu, I think.
That's the title of it on Patreon.
Yeah.
The regular podcast is a little bit. It's definitely not made for children, but the regular podcast is more of our. We're rated PG-13 on would you say?
What? But hell no, I wouldn't say
On
PG-13.
our podcast, like on the regular?
I try not to curse. I mean, I work with kids, and like, I think I'm a good influence, and I just think I have a horrible mouth. Like, I'm working on censoring myself. As a matter of fact, I'm really working on not saying like dumbass shit on my business page. Like, again, like that was me cursing again. Sorry for them kids out in like VA Beach that I think do actually listen to this, and their parents. Like, my bad. But where was I going with that?
You were just talking about being uncensored. I said that we were about
Oh.
PG-13, and you're saying we're
I
not
was
PG-13. We're
stop
like
trying
R.
to say dumb stuff. Yo, somebody came up with Favela Jiu-Jitsu. I posted something like, I reposted something about like women that do stuff in Jiu-Jitsu. And when I reposted it, I knew I was going to get shit because I got a lot of shit for when I posted the black athletes. So like, even about you, like, oh, what about like Tim and DJ? I was like, what the fuck about Tim? Like, I'm tired of seeing Tim. I'm tired of seeing Tim. And then so somebody brought up like Gabi Pisania, and they're like, oh, don't make me stop unfollowing this page. And I went on there and I was like, well, bye then. Like, you ain't even like, I'm the journalist that most writes about Gabi. Like, and I often credit like the start of Favela Jiu-Jitsu because like nobody would write about Gabi, and I was the one that put out her story. So if you feel like you can come to my page and be like, oh, I'm gonna stop following you because you don't have her in some massive, amazing post that has all these live videos, it's like 5 slides long that I didn't even do, then I really feel like you can go fuck yourself. And that's why I feel like we're not PG-13. That's where I was bringing it all around. I had a point, and that was it. I think it's more like 18 plus.
Wow, yeah, we definitely give you that rated R content because you just dropped a huge F-bomb. Or one
I
of the
could try to
F-bombs.
censor it. Like,
No, it's fine. We are R now. We are R. But that convo in our Patreon is definitely NC-17, especially that last conversation we had. But it was a lot of jiu-jitsu related stuff, but it's the dark, seedy side of jiu-jitsu.
there's a lot of dark, seedy sides to everything.
Very, very much so. You know, I was... just the way jiu-jitsu's going is just very, very concerning. It's not a very happy place. But we have a lot of subjects that we wanted to talk about today in this little solo dolo episode. We spoke earlier about breaking down footage and what I like to do, and you were wondering, you've been always wanting to ask me, like, Tim, how do you break down film? And I'm here to tell you, like, there's a lot that goes into how I break down footage and how I break down when I'm watching jiu-jitsu. So first,
I want to start off just interrupting, being like, so when you talking about breaking down film, are you
Yes.
studying just for the sake of studying film? Do you study a particular athlete?
okay, it all depends. Now, I'll give you an example. The situation last time we had a breakdown where it was Evolve Your Game, I watched each guy's footage, and I didn't watch it just so I was finding them. I watched it to find out what their tendencies were. You understand? Mm-hmm. So I watched all the guys, all their matches within the last couple years. Some guys had way more matches than others, but in the matches that I saw from the last couple of years of each guy, I got to notice their tendencies. With jiu-jitsu, it's one of those martial arts where I think all martial arts to some extent focus on patterns, but with jiu-jitsu, there are a lot of patterns. Guys drill the same sequences thousands of times. That's why some guys are just known as Berimbolo guys, some guys are known as Darce guys, or some guys are known as leg lock guys, which those generalizations can kind of be lazy in a lot of ways, but in essence, the top guys probably have at most 3 sequences that they've mastered, and they focus their game around it. And by me watching each guy's matches the last couple of years, I was able to learn their tendencies, and not just on a technical aspect, but I look at their strategies as far as in the matches. Like we said with Gianni Grippo, he's a guy that plays the edges, so that's his game. If we look at a guy like Thiago Macedo, he's a dog, so he's a scrambler. His game is going to be a little bit more open to scrambling and having to be on your toes and work that out. So I look at their tendencies, and then if it's a specific person, I'm doing that and I'm working on stuff for myself. So I'll watch my own matches and see how anything where I've gotten beat or any holes that I may have that they can exploit. If I'm going against a takedown guy, I'm not going to be worried about any kind of his guard. So I try to mesh what I'm good at and see how, when I watch the film, how we would mesh together in a match if it happened. So that's what I look at when I'm recording film or when I'm studying film.
I gotcha. So how often do you study? Like, if you, like, right now, like, I'm sorry, I'm trying to determine if I want to call him out on having Dunkin' Donuts in his house again after we recently spoke about him talking to a nutritionist, and he does. But then he also followed up, he's like, he's not cutting weight right now. So it's like, well, I know you do have Fight to Win, but if you weren't preparing for a fight, like, how often do you actually study film? Like,
during the pandemic, I studied a little bit, like when it first happened. For the first few months when I thought, oh, we'll be back at it by the end of the summer, I was watching a lot of film like nothing had changed. When I'm in the game and when I'm actively competing, I watch the film of all the guys I might potentially go up against. So that could be anywhere from, I mean, I would study film in the middle of the season every day, at least a little bit. I'd watch a match or two. When the pandemic first happened, I watched every day. When we were training in Master Lloyd's garage, I would spend half the day just watching film between the morning and the evening sessions that we
half of the day?
Yeah, I just watch matches. You know, I just would watch matches just so I could visualize what they're going to do. And if we ever went up against each other, by visualizing, and there's been studies done where when you visualize something, most of the time it's going to assist you in executing whatever you visualize. Of course, if you're a white belt and you visualize beating up Jamil, it's not going to happen. However, if it's an even matchup, I need to be able to visualize how I would counter their attacks, how I would attack them, and just getting to know them, their personality on the mat. Because there's this, what is this called, like Nutella, and it's like a Portuguese little slang now in jiu-jitsu. It's like there's Nutella jiu-jitsu, and then there's, I guess, Nutella, like soft.
I know what Nutella is, and then I'm saying favela would be the opposite of Nutella. I was just going to put myself on, is what I was doing.
Oh, yes.
Thank you.
Yes, shout out to
I don't know
favela.
what the opposite is, but, you know.
You can learn their personalities and how they grapple. If I find out that you're a bitch, there's certain things that I can do in the match to kind of bring the bitch out of you. Everyone has a bitch button, by the way. If you're watching this, don't just think everyone's a super thug in jiu-jitsu, that if you're a black belt or you're a black belt world champion, that you're untouchable. Everyone has a bitch button. It's just how you get to it. There are some people that have different ways of getting to your bitch button, but everyone has a bitch button.
Yeah, for sure.
Everyone has a bitch button. It's just a matter of, and since we are on the subject, if you know yourself, knowing yourself is the most important thing. So in order to watch film as a competitor, you have to know yourself as a competitor and know, like, there's some places I'm just not going to be able to go with this guy. And it's not like a manly thing. Sometimes it's like, I know my best chances of winning a match are going to be on top. So when I'm watching film on this person, I'm not just going to be like, I'm pulling, visualizing me on my back. No, I'm visualizing how I can get them on their back or score on them or get around whatever techniques that they're great at. So you got to know yourself.
That makes sense. I was trying to explain that to somebody that I train with. He's like a big dude in my bubble, by the way, because I've also been kirking out on people for like coming by, sliding by my house, like there's no COVID, stuff like that. My bad, because I do have an attitude. So I was training with this guy, and it's like, you know, sometimes he'll let me do like the same stuff to him, because you know how Master Lloyd be with his repetition, and there's like, I have my patterns, I have my moves, and I like excel, and I do them all the time. And it's like, you know, if I love to get on your back and choke you, like all the time, like I just love hanging on your back, and I'll tell you I'm gonna hang on your back, because I definitely don't want to like deal with you like any kind of scramble. I was like, if I mount you, why would you ever turn? Like, it makes no sense. Like, because I only have one choke from mount, but I have 4 from the back. So, like, never, like, if you don't know what to do, like, and I'm constantly threatening to get on your back and choke, like, it's better to do nothing than to turn. But, like, that's, like, a hard, like, people think jujitsu and then, like, they don't think of that in, like, that kind of way. It's like, where are your high percentage of attacks? Like, I definitely, like, I don't have that many attacks from mount. I don't have that many attacks from side control, and I'm very aware of that. Like, I am very good at transitioning to your back. Like, I'm not going to attack you from side control. I'm going to transition to your back, and I'm going to choke you. And, like, that's always going to be my game. And, like, some people are good at stopping it, and some people aren't. And, like, I don't even hide it, like, because I love just being better at you at the transition, and like I thrive off of that. Like, you can know what I'm gonna do, and I'm just gonna be better than you are ever at blocking it. And that's just kind of how I train. But
it makes sense, and that's the philosophy of how I train people. I don't try to make a 300-pound dude wrestle like a 130-pound dude. When I worked with you about your game plan, you know, I remember, like, yeah, you're not a side control person. You're not, just from, not that to say you're super tiny, but like you're not a big person. You're not super strong for your weight. So you're not going to be able to just paintbrush somebody or Kimura somebody. And that's what takes studying. So when we're talking about breaking down film, a lot of it is studying. So I worked with you. I had to study your film. I think we're going to go into like people that claim to be coaches and think they're influencers so they know how to explain the art or understand it. Watching film is studying. You have to study. So I studied your film. I watched as many of your matches as I could, and I saw the patterns, and then I saw how you executed those patterns, because that's another thing too. Just because you have proper game plan, just because you know yourself, execution. You know, I'm the type of person where I'd rather have 50% level of difficulty with 100% execution. So when I'm studying someone, or I'm studying someone I'm coaching or going against, I look at the execution. I knew that whenever you went from some kind of side control attack, whether it was your personality, whether it was what you liked, your strength, any attributes, the execution wasn't always there. But your ability to get to the back, your ability to finish from the back is excellent. And I say, let's double down on what we're great at and find ways to get to there if we're talking about a competition. All the other ancillary shit that you want to do, like, hey, Nico, if you want to be able to bench press 300 pounds and pin somebody to the ground and paintbrush them, that's on you. But if I'm teaching you, or if I'm studying you as a coach, I'm going to make it so we are focusing on getting to the back, finishing to the back, and winning. So when I'm watching someone's film, I look at what gets them the W, and I'm trying to take it away. And that requires a lot of time and a lot of effort, and it takes years of practice, but that's my process, Nico. Any other questions?
Yeah, I do actually have one more. This is going to turn into like my Q&A for Tim, which we really need to bring this to like more of a Patreon venue, like more people can ask their questions, I say, because my next question that I would ask Anna, because you mentioned it is like if you're doing this for competition, and I know I train for competition, but like how do you divide training between competition and then just like varying things, like and just being well-rounded in things, like developing that guard, or developing like a matrix guard or a worm guard that's like not your A game but could potentially work? So how do you divide that time, one, and then how do you divide, like, because we come from TLI where you just train specifically. In normal gyms, you just have to do whatever it is. Like, so if you don't have that kind of control.
Okay, this is going to be a little bit of a complicated answer. It might be a little philosophical. I'm going to make some comparisons that may or may not hit, but that's okay. First, the mindset of a competitor and the mindset of a martial artist is different. You're both practicing the martial arts, but your mindset is different. As a competitor, if you're competing professionally, which, I mean, we could argue whether jiu-jitsu is really professional or not. But if you're trying to make a living winning competitions, you're going to be focused on winning and doubling down on what you're great at. At least that's the school that I come from and where I came up in the system, which one of the best systems in the world, the Team Lloyd Irvin system, is that we know what you're good at. We know what works for you. We know what you feel comfortable doing. We are going to double down on that. We are going to focus on what you're great at, create a system for you, and expand upon it, and make it so you are able to implement it at the highest level. Now, we can argue about whether or not that's the best way, but that is a way, and that's the best way that I would say I personally know. In that mindset, we're not going to be going into the weeds with a whole bunch of extra shit. DJ Jackson may know how to do worm guard, but he's not going to bust that shit out in the tournament. And if his job is to win the tournament, he's not going to focus on worm guard. He may every once in a while here and there, but if we're training for competition, we're not doing this hippy dippy shit. We're not doing the hippie martial artist mindset, which there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a different mindset. A martial artist mindset is, I want to expand my horizons at all times. I want to dabble in this. I want to dabble in that. Now, some people that are in the martial artist, not a professional mindset, when they're in the room and they're rolling, they got their shit and they want to get their shit in, whether it's a half guard or like you're a takedown guy in the room or you like to pass a certain way. You're going to have your game, but you're going to be more inclined to experiment, which is fine. If you want to experiment, that's cool. It's a different path. And a lot of schools do that. A lot of schools, they'll do different shit every day. One month you're doing De La Hiva, next month you're doing judo throws, and then it's all just all kinds of gumbo, jiu-jitsu gumbo, and nobody knows what the fuck is going on.
I've seen so many like different variations. I've had like, no, this isn't my own school. I'll say it. It's like I've been calling my own people out. Like at Today Kids Project, like there'd be one teacher that would teach like 3 moves at once, and then like not like maybe 2 of them would be connected, and then 1 random. And I was like a white belt at the time, and I'm like, you can't do this to us, 1 at a time.
Yes.
Instructions. Then let us go do the one. It was like, how are you gonna give us 3 and then be like, go ahead, like so, just. And that when you mention systems and things, I think that's also something that's kind of relatively new coming into the sport, especially coming into Brazil. Like the difference in pedagogy and the difference in training styles, like that lends to that. Like having structure. It wasn't till... Did I have structure at Beta? I wouldn't say there was no structure at Team Lloyd Irvin. There was no structure at Novo Uniao and the Jiu-Jitsu. No, I didn't have structure till I went to TLI, I would say. I had great training. Not to say I didn't have great training, but to say like that kind of formal structure.
And you can get good training. You can have great training partners. I like that point. You can have great training partners. You can have great training, but it's the mindset. If we're trying to build world champions, there has to be structure. If you really want your students to get good, you're going to have to spare a lot of the whole... I've been very professional today, but I have to say, there's a lot of like yuppie, hippie, fucking soft ass mentality in jiu-jitsu where people are just like, well, I let my students basically tell me what to teach, or I just, free flowing and we're just doing whatever. And I'm like, no one gets better that fucking way. Let's keep it 100. Like, no one's going to get better that type of way. You want to have fun, but there has to be structure in it if you're trying to improve your jiu-jitsu. I've been to yoga classes a bunch of times. I compare jiu-jitsu to yoga in a lot of ways because it's a practice. It's with a partner, and it's forced yoga. Someone's forcing you into these crazy positions, but it's the same principle. It's an art form. There are rules and concepts to it. The way you use your body is unlike anything else. And I think a part of the reason why people get addicted to it is because it's like you're surfing on the ground basically with partner. And I compare it to yoga because yoga has a structure, and there are certain types of yogas, they have a certain amount of positions, and they don't really fuck with it, right? Am I correct?
And they don't?
Yeah, they don't like mess with like in Bikram yoga or like hot yoga.
Oh, you mean like yoga sex, like not sex, like SECT
sex, SECT sex of yoga. Like they have different
like,
principles
they don't,
and they have different
I
techniques,
was like,
and you stick to them. And there's a right way and a wrong way,
ways,
and there's a flow of things. I look at jiu-jitsu the same way. It's a lot more complicated because it's a combat sport, but there are rules to learning this shit, and you just doing a bunch of different fucking moves every week. No one's gonna get better, and quite frankly, people eventually realize that they're not learning shit. So there has to be structure. But there's difference between good training, like you're trying to just roll. There's difference between you want to be a world champion. There's difference where we want to learn in a structure, but I'm gonna just try new shit here and there. So that's a good thing though. There's different types of learning, I'd say.
To each his own. And I think it's very hard for people nowadays because if you don't know, like I'm a teacher, I'm an educator. Like I have a master's degree in educational psychology, so like I study the way that people learn, and then I've been teaching for years. So I think like when you take into consideration, there's a lot of different ways that people can learn, and so it's very hard to approach teaching jiu-jitsu like that unless people are self-aware of how they can learn. Like I'm very aware of like when people don't teach me in a way that I'm receptive to learning, or I know that I won't retain it, and like I'm also very aware that that will make me shut down for the better or for the worse. But you know, like I don't know, if you were in elementary school, like those would be all the things like, oh, this kid needs structures and supports and differentiation. But like when you're like an adult in the real world, you don't get any of these things, and like people expect you to function or expect things to be functional when they don't kind of reflect on like what they need, or like they're in a bad situation and they're not being receptive to things. So it like even what Natalie and Osiris were saying when they were talking about like that revolutionary recovery, like you gotta kind of be holistic, you gotta be self-aware, you gotta know what you need and put yourself in that kind of situation.
Know thyself. Well, Nico, we're talking about people that teach, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like there's a lot of snake oil salesmen in our midst. Like I said, man, jiu-jitsu is a very dark place. I just think the jiu-jitsu, sidebar, I think jiu-jitsu is going into a really dark place.
I think the world is in a really dark place right now, Tim.
You think, I mean, yeah, it's always kind of been in a dark place, but it used to be that I thought jiu-jitsu was kind of like, keep on saying like, I've always felt as though jiu-jitsu was a safe haven in some kind of way.
The safe space, you know,
a safe space.
We all thought jiu-jitsu was a safe space. Just,
in a way, I knew there was bullshit.
And hugs
but this is a very dark place. And one of the ways it's gotten darker is the snake oil salesman. There's a lot of people that I've seen, I've noticed it during the pandemic, that claim that they can help people get better at jiu-jitsu, or they're putting out techniques out there, or they're running this whole game that I am the jiu-jitsu guru, and if you follow my program, I can help you improve, even though I have no fucking credentials.
Oh man, this kind of just makes me want to walk off set. It's like, because then you say like, oh, they're doing this. It's like, are they really doing it, or is it just Instagram? And like, that's just the problem. Like, are they really doing it, or are they just posting on Instagram?
Yeah,
are they making money off of it? Like, or do they just
they gotta hustle and they have
money?
No, they like, put it out there.
But like, how many people?
They're putting. Listen, I would have never mentioned it unless the person started posting that people are actually going with it and they have clients.
Joe, you ain't gonna drop names?
No, I'm not.
You gonna maybe get the names behind the scenes? You gonna? Oh, he doing that to y'all.
It's just some shit I noticed. I'm not gonna put nobody on blast, because the fucked up part is if I say their name, somebody, because there's enough people that watch this podcast, are gonna follow them, and someone's gonna fall for the trick. I just believe it. Even if they listen to me say it's bullshit, I'm not going to say this person's name, but we've talked about it off air, Nico, and you're going to know exactly who I'm talking about. But there's plenty of other people that just go out here and they say they got the magic bullet. And it's not so much their running game, it's just their whole, and a lot of people's gimmick is, I never won anything at any level, but it's okay. I'm quirky just like you, or I'm just like you, and I know a little bit more jiu-jitsu than you, so listen to me. Listen to me. And they run this game that says, and as someone that has dedicated their life to being as great as I can in this sport and try to teach as well as I can, they run game and try to say this credentials don't matter or they're not a big deal. But they are a big deal. The whole reason and the appeal for jiu-jitsu over karate at the time when it first blew up was that you had to show proof. You couldn't just snap, like, karate chop a brick and be like, this is the peak of self-defense. The reason why I love jiu-jitsu is because you had to show and prove every day. You actually had to spar. We actually had to spar. So competition is a big part of that.
True.
Coaching people to compete, which is the best way to show whose jiu-jitsu is better, is a big fucking deal. So you're shitting on everyone that had trained for years to be able to compete at a high level, and to shit on people that coach at a high level and just say, oh, well, that shit don't matter. Listen to me and try to get your little bag. That is a whole bunch of horse shit, okay? I get it. Some guys are just fun to learn from. But do not confuse just having a lot of students or having people that like you as you being a great coach or that person being a great coach. Don't confuse somebody that has a lot of followers as someone that's an actual competitor and knows what the fuck they're talking about. It's the clout currency, man.
That's true. That's true. Because they talk a lot about like cookie cutter instructionals and just like basic things. And I guess I'm kind of BJJ spoiled. So like I couldn't fathom buying and trying to learn from like instructionals. Like, you know, I would rather seek knowledge from the person, like, and somebody that kind of knows me personally. Like, because how can you really help somebody if they don't know what your game is or what your style is or how you go about doing things, you know? So I've always sought knowledge from people, whether that meant like going down to Brazil or going down to North Carolina to train with Dwan, who's the one that taught me my second favorite back choke, you know? So I traveled to North Carolina to learn that, and I've choked how many people out since, you know? As opposed to a video, I don't see the value in that.
You gotta feel it.
Sometimes like as a starter, but like I don't know, and that's just me. Like again, I know I'm a kinesthetic learner, like, and I know like I need that conversation. I need like I had that issue where I didn't like I had to tell somebody like I wouldn't take a purple belt from them because they just give them out like every time of the year, and because I was a student they might have given me one, but I was like and like some people kind of thought it was messed up, and I felt really bad for saying that. I was like, but he can't even tell me like like what pass do I do? Like he couldn't tell me, and like why, like, so that was no. That was a no. Like I won it from Tay Today, and like I would take it from Master Lloyd because, you know, he's earned that place in like my journey. Like I've learned from him. But you know, I think it's kind of fucked up to say as a blue belt, like you really gotta earn it. But like when you talk about martial arts, you know, like these are people that really imparted something on me. It means a lot to me. Like, and shit, I've been a blue belt for like 7 years, I think now. Like when I get this belt, like yo, you gotta be,
yeah,
you gotta be there, you know. So
it means something. It means something. And I think that's what's special about jiu-jitsu. Even though it's a very dark, evil place now, it's probably always been. But the beautiful part about jiu-jitsu is that if you earn it from the right people, the right way, it's one of the most special things that you can have. That's all I got to say about that.
I think there's a lot of like beautiful parts of jiu-jitsu. A lot of good. I mean, even like Galvao came back around and he apologized, admitted that he was wrong, recognized the error in his ways. Like,
don't get me started, because we're gonna have like a whole 2-hour show if that's the case.
No, we need to wrap this one
yes,
up.
We're gonna wrap it up for the people. We have so much more to talk about though that we had to give you guys, but you can catch that on the BJJ Goons Patreon. Make sure you guys go to it for all the exclusive, uncensored, unruly, just straight up nasty content. Go to patreon.com/BJJ Goons. Where can they find you, Nico?
You can find me at No New Nico on Instagram. Had to space out. I was checking my calendar to see when the next Patreon episode is gonna drop. Y'all, we're dropping 2 extra episodes a month. They drop on the 1st and the 15th. Got to keep it in line with the favela, you know, that government cheese, you know, pay respects to Bone Thugs. So we dropped the one on Ricardo. Number 2 is Pobs. Number 3 is Sex, Drugs, and Jiu-Jitsu. So make sure you get down with the BJJ Goons Patreon, y'all.
And you can catch me at Tim Spriggs BJJ on Instagram and Facebook. This has been the BJJ Goons Podcast. Peace.